Excuse me. Now, following recent incidents of violence at schools, the Department of Education has called on learners who are affected by bullying or victims of bullying to report or speak to childline counsellors. And to talk to us a little bit more about this, I'm now joined in studio by Lynne Cawood. She's Gauteng's Director for SA Childline. Lynne, thanks very much for joining us. Good to see you again.
Lovely to be with you. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, so concerning and sad to see what's happening in our schools. It's not new, but it does seem to be being seen more. And I just wonder, as people who interface with these children quite a bit, is it on the increase, the number of calls you're getting and the concerns that are being raised, or is it much the same?
Well, certainly the stats do seem to have been on the increase, but even more worryingly, the acts of bullying seem to encompass a greater level of violence, which is very, very concerning, often incorporating weapons and guns and being linked to gangsterism. So, it is something that we at Childline are extremely concerned about, and I think that we have to see it in the context of our country, which is becoming very sadly, much more aggressive on all levels. So if you think of the police stats, just released recently, 2.2 million crimes reported and dealt with by SABC. And, from those 2.2 million crimes, there are families and children that are involved and exposed to that. So one of the precursors to acting out levels of violence is exposure to violence. And the Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention did extensive research on violence in schools in 2012. And, so their stats are around 6%, 6.5% of children reported physical bullying in schools, and 20% of children reporting cyberbullying in schools. So those are, that's, doesn't, sound like a lot,
about
but
the escalation in the type of violence. I mean, I was quite disturbed, and perhaps it's maybe even kind of my own ignorance, but I'm seeing violence in young girls that I've never really seen before, experienced before. Is that something that you're seeing more and more?
So the study indicates that girls will be exposed more to rumour mongering and gossiping and that kind of abuse. But certainly, we are exposed to children that are, girls that are involved in fights. Whereas the bullying that's, in terms of exposure to that boys experience has traditionally been more violent and physical. Whereas girls, it's been around rumour mongering and some form of sexual abuse. But there does seem to be, that it's not that different anymore. So, I think, Peter, that we as a society, and especially the adult section in our society, has to really consider what are we doing, what are we exposing children to. Because the study also indicated that children that were exposed to violence are more likely themselves to become violent. And you can understand it if you, think back to when we were children. It's much, it's a kind of much better position to be the aggressor than the victim. So, children see that as their choice. And I suppose what we should all be teaching children is that there's a middle way. Yeah. There's a human rights way, there's a respect way, there's a way in which we can treat each other cooperatively and collaboratively and listen to each other, which has always been the South African way.
So what do we do? I mean, I remember, my high school, when I was much younger, especially when I was in the junior part of the school, bullying was almost the way of life. You just expected it. I never told my father. I never went home and told. It was almost a thing that you've got to bite the bullet and just live through. How do we change that thinking?
In previous generations, your father probably would have said, and I'm not maligning your dad at all, like go and fight your own battles, because that was, when it wasn't so violent, it was kind of a learning experience for children. But unfortunately, we can't leave children to fight their own battles, because there are very serious consequences, some of them fatal. Children committing suicide, children who don't want to go to school and who will drop out of school prematurely, so that'll have a long-term impact on their lives, on their careers, and in terms of their emotional maturity and development. So I think, our recommendation at Childline is certainly that you need to tell somebody, and you need to keep on telling somebody until somebody listens and helps you.
But there is that fear, isn't there, that if you tell, that the bullying will get worse?
Yes, because often you threaten that if you tell anybody, we'll come after you and, your whole family, including your grandmother. But, it's really important because that one stands up to bullies, because I think what we really need to understand, that bullies themselves need assistance, that very often and interestingly, the highest category of cases that we deal with in our schools program when we go and do school talks and children come forward and disclose to us is bullying. The highest category that we're dealing with in our counselling, community-based counselling centres in Gauteng is children with behavioural disorders. So our children have really taken, what they see around it and have begun to implement it.
So I'm a young teen, I'm at school, I'm getting bullied. What are you going to do for me if I phone you at Childline?
So Childline will consider the particular situation that you're in, who's bullying you, how much danger you are in, who are your support systems in terms of people that are able to intervene at the school situation, how violent and aggressive, and what's the level of risk. And from that risk assessment and analysis, we would then, do an intervention that would be particularly geared to your situation. So it may involve, helping the person to stand up to the bully themselves. It would definitely involve talking to parents or caregivers and engaging with the school to say this is a situation that is happening, and the Department of Education has a safe schools policy with protocols and disciplinary procedures that can be followed. But I think specifically in terms of the high levels of violence where you see weapons being taken to school and high levels of gangsterism, that we really do need to first of all, try to establish a safe schools situation with lots of programs and talking and developing people's empathy and inclusion and helping, children to feel a level of empathy for those that are shy or friendless or a little bit disabled or lonely or whatever the difficulties that they're having. But, failing that, there does need to be a tough love program that does involve the schools, the parents, possibly the criminal justice system if crimes are being committed.
We're running out of time, but I just wanted to know, how do parents spot, if their child is being bullied or if their child is a bully?
So that's like a really important question, and I think the best advice I can give to any parent is keep communication open with your children. Create a space where they feel free to talk to you and engage with you about anything that happens with them. Notice when their self-esteem seems to drop, when they don't seem to want to go to school, where there's a level of depression and sadness and, a complete change in behavior. Also to invite parents to phone the Childline number, which is 0800 55555, all 10 numbers. To seek advice, because we are really there to assist the parents to deal with the problems that children have. But the advice is to tell and to keep on telling until someone listens, and you can phone Childline and Childline will help to advise you. We do have a contract with the Department of Education in Gauteng where they are supporting a portion of our 24/7 toll-free helpline, which is free from all service providers, and also a face-to-face counselling service, which is, I think, very progressive.
What's that number again?
It's 08000 55 555. So all 10
fantastic.
fingers.
There it is on the screen. Phone that number if you need help, whether you're a parent or a child, particularly if you're being bullied. Call somebody, make them listen. They will help you as they can. Lynne Cawood, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Lovely
Thank you so
to
much.
See you, Peter. Go well.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more business news for you with Colin. Stay with us.